Welcome to the Cybersecurity Talk on TechCon, Day 3 of the user conference, EMEA, Prague. So I'm Brian Owen. I'm the Cybersecurity Manager at OSIsoft. My colleague, Vadim Fedorov from Moscow office, System Engineer, and my partner in cybersecurity here in EMEA.
My pleasure.
So what we have prepared for you today is I thought we might have the most technical talk of TechCon, but the web API guys might have beat me. They actually had code. But this talk will get into some details that you might not be expecting. And I hope some of you will be prepared to talk to your IT staff when you get home, because some of these ideas we have will help them help you. Now, first, to set up why cybersecurity is important, I got some really good reminders yesterday listening to the talk from Qatar Power when he showed a slide that showed how life expectancy in Qatar had improved because of the availability of affordable power and clean water. And that's part of what OSIsoft is about. You're making life-saving drugs. You're making the world a better place. And let's face it, there are actions that happen in this world that can spoil that. And cybersecurity is one of the vectors that can happen. And it's up to OSIsoft and all of us to be sure that we're doing our job as good engineers. So this slide is a bit of review because we won't be able to cover topics that we've covered in years past, and these topics are still valid today. But I want to do a quick review about it. In specific, last year we called Vadim's talk, actually. He also reviewed last year, but PyServer 2015 has a huge step change in our security resiliency in the PyServer. This is a very, if you're critical infrastructure, serious about a reliable system, please upgrade your Pi software. And that I can't emphasize enough. If you want to talk more after this, I'd be glad to share that, or go to the PyServer booth at the expo. They can tell you more about that. What we are going to talk about are some architectural patterns and web server tips and countermeasures, all associated with this topic. And what we're hearing from all of you and what this conference has been about is transforming your world with data. And what we see is that it's no longer just your plant. We're no longer below the internet. Your data needs to be shared across your value chain. I talked to someone with a refinery, and they said they outsource the pumps. They no longer own the pumps. The wells are actually operated by someone that owns the pumps, and when they come on the skid, there's like 250 Pi points that are sent to the Pi system, and they pay the operator of the pump based on the performance that they get. And that's an example of this value chain that has gone beyond your corporate walls, beyond your corporate perimeter. And it takes data to execute effectively. But there's trouble for IT when you do this. Security is particularly challenging, and we reach a fork in the road. And the first fork in the road we're going to talk about is VPNs. VPNs are tried and true. I used my VPN just an hour ago. Maybe you did too. We all trust them, we use them, and rely on them, and it's today's technology. But can we continue this way? So we're going to talk about some architectural patterns that suggest that there's a better way. Let's talk about today's VPN, though, and why maybe we need to change. So today, a lot of people share their data and have been doing it for years using the Pi-to-Pi interface. And Pi-to-Pi 2015 just released this August, some great security updates in it. And the job of Pi-to-Pi is very unidirectional and very solid and secure. But the issue is when you connect a VPN tunnel between two large corporations, You're literally giving the other entity an IP address that's valid on your network to him, and vice versa. Pi-to-pi data might not be the only thing that travels on that tunnel. And that is very hard for your IT department to manage and control. One of the large global companies told me on a daily basis they have 10,000 of these that their IT department is trying to secure. 10,000 VPNs. What if just one of them has malware? This VPN tunnel can transmit the malware, and one end can infect the other. So we think there's a better way, and you saw on the keynote from Autotech, the Pi Cloud Connect solution. This has been designed to avoid that problem. There is no end-to-end VPN between the publisher and the subscriber. You don't have a valid IP address. Malware does not know how to traverse what amounts to OSIsoft as a proxy in the middle. The Pi Cloud Connect service decouples you from the threat. And better than that, what used to be for your publisher 10,000 connections, you can publish once, and then each subscriber can make their own connection. So your IT department workload got much, much reduced. Now, you also notice something on here. One of the reasons Pi-to-Pi has some limited functionality. What you see on here is AF data also traverses with Cloud Connect. So not only do you get more security, you get more functionality. Now, that functionality is very easy to manage, and this is a great security feature because once you publish, you can delegate the security of what you publish to someone who manages a branch of the AF tree. You simply say, I want to publish everything under this production area, and then your engineers can adjust the content as needed in that publication. The publisher controls what's published. No longer with Pi-to-Pi do you have to worry about, oh, can the destination read something they're not supposed to see, and you have to implement tag-by-tag security to really lock it down. Much easier, a great savings in administration for system managers. So I hope that helped you see how VPNs are a path that has served us well, but there's a better way. And that path toward a cloud service provides a good security value. There's another fork in the road that we'll talk much more detail about. And this is the problem all of us hate. How many passwords do you have? I probably have hundreds. I only try to remember a very small few. I have to reset my passwords all the time because I don't try to remember them. Some of you are the same, I'm sure. And how many times with these passwords do you have the impossible task of different complexity rules and locking yourself out and having to call help desks? This is a very difficult problem. We cannot, as technology leaders, as people who write software, we can't continue to propagate this. So OSIsoft has been working hard to adopt federated identity approaches. And we're going to talk in detail about it. But I want to enumerate a few other weaknesses your IT department faces with the traditional approach. So this one we call duplicate accounts. This one is kind of insidious, but this is where to get a service, you have to create another account. How many of you, when you go to the web service and there's something there you want, but you have to register for it, fill in a form, just click out and say, forget it, I don't want to do it. This is just creating more accounts. The other one is VPNs. We just talked about that. If you want external people to access your data, do you really want to give them a VPN access? You have to maybe get your IT department's degree, you have to get legal to sign off. This is a very difficult process for your business. It's not very fast because it exposes a lot of risk. And then this last one I hinted at, federated identity. This is the idea that you can use the credentials that are already managed by your company, a trusted identity provider, and that is allowed, your supplier is allowed to use his own login and password on your system but it doesn't give them any rights to your network. And that's what Vadim will enter in on this discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Again, my name is Vadim Fedorov, and today I'm going to talk to you about Coresight and claims-based identity. So imagine yourself a situation which actually Brian described a minute ago. Your partner needs access to your Coresight, which is like in your internal network, right? So you can organize that access in a different ways, but let's say I don't want like my VPN number 10,001. I don't want to duplicate, Active Directory accounts. Don't want to have, new passwords for the users, and I don't want them to be calling to me as an IT guy to reset the password for the company I don't work for, right? So with that, I would say the option for us, the best one, is claims-based identity. And that's our scenario for today. So on the right hand, we have our Coresight, which is situated in our PyClaims local domain. And on the left-hand side, you have this partner, which is called PyApple, because these guys are a small company. They make apple pies, and probably their baker needs access to your Coresight displays for productivity, right? So what's in the middle? How do you access, how do you organize this access for this company? What components do you need to set up? That's the topic today. Well, first of all, you need an identity provider. This is a service that would authenticate third-party users for you. And we used Windows Azure Active Directory up in the cloud for identity provider services. And it was actually easy for us because this company is, again, I said, really small, and they have all the infrastructure in the cloud. So they had already a tenant in Windows Azure, and they call it PyApple. And I've got a couple of users, formerly 2 users, 2 employees in this company, Billy Bob and Mary Jo, and some others configured. So so far, we've got these users authenticated with Windows Azure, but you need probably somehow to map these users to our local domain. And that's what's done by so-called Active Directory Federation Services, or ADFS for short. You got to remember this acronym ADFS because I'm going to be using it throughout the presentation a lot. So what it does, among all other functions, mainly it just maps all the users, or maybe a group of users, from external identity, which is PyApple in our case, to our local domain user, which we set up as a guest PyApple. So don't be confused with this Microsoft.com, because for small companies like PyApple, they just grant this domain name, and they can use their PyApple.microsoft.com as a domain. And also we set up that everybody from OSIsoft.com is mapped to guest OSIsoft user. And we've got a bunch of rules to configure that in ADFS. So this is the screenshot from ADFS configuration, so you can see how these rules are configured. All right, so what we've got so far is just third-party users authenticated with Windows Azure. And on the other hand, we've got these users mapped to our local identities, local users. And there's something missing between these two. There should be a connection. And actually, there's more than a connection. There is a trust. So you have to trust your identity provider. And actually, what we configured here is we're trusting 2 identity providers. First one is PyApple, and you can see, like in brackets, is WAAD, Windows Azure Active Directory. And this is our partners. And the second entity, Active Directory, here is just for our local one. So we have local Active Directory controller, and we need our users to be able to log in with that. So we've got the whole chain working now. Users are authenticated with Azure in the cloud. They got mapped to local identities, local users in the domain. And these guys are trusting each other. And now we're set and ready for the demo. There it goes. So I'm going to access Coresight as a MaryJo user from PyApple company. And I never get there. That's not the Coresight window, is it? And this is the authentication prompt. And I've got asked that to provide an identity to authenticate myself, either with FS Claims, local domain login, or Azure Active Directory login PyApple. So we select PyApple, and as a user MaryJo, we provide some credentials. So maryjo@pyapple.microsoft.com. Provide a password, and we sign in. So MaryJo isn't a user within our local Active Directory. She's never been there. We didn't duplicate accounts, right? But now you can see that she is actually accessing the Coresight. The Coresight is loading, and the data is going to be there in a second. And in the right upper corner, you can see PyApple guest is the account in the local network that MaryJo was mapped. So was that simple enough? I hope it was, because that's how it should be for a user, right? But in fact, there's a bunch of things happening there under the hood, and I'll show you that in a second in details. So this is our setup, the setup for this demo. On the left-hand side, you can see our PyApple tenant in Microsoft Azure Active Directory, and below that, on the left side, you can see MaryJo computer, a laptop somewhere at her home. And on the right-hand side, you can see our local domain, pyclaims.local, with Active Directory controller, ADFS server, and the Coresight, of course. And in the middle, there is something that I didn't describe before, but I'll cover that in a minute. It's just DMZ with web application proxy. So what happens when MaryJo tries to access Coresight? Well, do you remember she never got there? She got this invitation to provide her credentials. And that happened because this guy in the middle, web application proxy, just intercepted the request. And he knows that he can see actually sniffing around all the time, and can see that there are no credentials provided, no tokens that Coresight would accept, right? And it redirects us to ADFS, because ADFS would authenticate a user. And what ADFS does, it then says, like, all right, I trust 2 identity providers you configured. First one is FS Claims. This is just for local domain, and if MaryJo would have account in our local Active Directory, she could have logged in with that, but we didn't do that. Instead, we use PyApple Windows Azure Active Directory to authenticate her. So we selected this option, and we were redirected actually straight to Windows Azure Active Directory. So we provided our credentials, and we've got MaryJo token back from Windows Azure Active Directory. What is important here is that ADFS doesn't care at all about what happens between MaryJo computer and Azure Active Directory. I mean, all it cares is just a token signed with trusted identity provider, right? So whether it's a password or it could be fingerprints, whatever, all it cares, just properly signed token. Then we provide this token back to ADFS, and what ADFS does for us. Do you remember this mapping table? So we proved that we're MaryJo, and we got to be mapped to guest PyApple user because we are from PyApple, right? And yeah, so what we get in in exchange is guessed by Apple token. And this is the token for local domain already. And our Mary Jo computer is happy, and it tries to go to Coresight again. But again, this nasty guy in the middle says, all right, now you got the token, but that's not the right one. You used WS Federation token, but Coresight needs a Kerberos one. So it takes the burden of us and communicates with local domain to get a Kerberos ticket. And actually, after that, we get this guessed by Apple Windows token, which is colored in purple. And then, boom, and Mary Jo is able to access her Coresight display.
What do you think?
Was that simple enough?
So a lot going on under the hood there, but did you see a VPN anywhere? No. Did Mary Jo ever have a password from your IT department? No, she used her own. This is a great savings. I was with a customer that wanted to deploy Coresight, and they were all ready to go and share it with external people. And the IT department said, but wait a minute, we don't want to do the help desk for this. We need to set up a self-service password reset site. That'll only take us 3 months. And the whole project got put on hold. So not only do you save all the effort of a help desk, but your projects get done faster, there's much less legal hassle. And I got news for you that those tokens coming from Azure Active Directory, cryptographically much stronger than anything that's going on in your domains. So this is a very cyber-strong solution, and we do recommend that your IT departments look at this kind of federation, investing in it for your future.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brian. And to advance the topic a bit, to get you maybe a bit more excited about this technology, I'm going to share with you a couple of more basics about Windows Azure Active Directory, and namely identity types. So you probably noticed that actually, apart from Billy Bob and Mary Jo, which were employees of PyApple, we've got Mike Lamley from OSIsoft there, which was able to authenticate with Azure Active Directory. And this is because Azure Azure Active Directory is able to use foreign identity providers. And also, of course, you can create your own domains there. And you can use other things like Microsoft Live Account and other identity providers. So if you decide to use a foreign identity provider for that, you probably want to synchronize it, or at least import some credentials from your local AD, and Microsoft provides a bunch of tools to do that. But of course, you're always welcome to do that manually if you want. One of the other interesting things is multi-factor authentication. So imagine when you log into your online banking account, you got asked for a password, you provide a password, then you probably get a text message with a code to get this code as well. So this is the second factor in multi-factor authentication. And Windows Azure Active Directory comes out of the box available to use that technology, and could be a much more complicated scenario. And last but not least, intrusion detection reports. Imagine another situation. Somebody is trying to access some resource with the same credentials from London and Moscow at the same time. Would that happen in the real world? I mean, is that a normal situation? I mean, doesn't look so. At least we've got to know about that. We have to track it down somehow. And intrusion detection reports allows you to do that and many more things. So with that, I hope you got a bit more excited, gonna be exploring Azure Active Directory on your own further. And back to Brian.
Thanks, Vadim. Yeah, Azure Active Directory, we are actively building products to work in this environment for our cloud services, and we're very keen on the security features. Maybe some of you using Office 365, so you already know this, but yeah, Azure Active Directory is a solid way toward the future. So that's not the end of the story when your Coresight is being shared outside your company walls, though. You'll need to strengthen your web server. These are traditional hardening steps. Your IT department's already familiar with them, but I would like to provide an overview of why this is important. And the first thing for Coresight is this problem of someone snooping in the middle of the connection, right? If you're at the coffee shop, the attacker can pretend to be the web server, get in the middle, and steal information from you, even your passwords, heaven forbid. So we strongly recommend that you put a SSL certificate on your server. Just like the Web API talk, this is mandatory in Web API. By Coresight, we don't require it, but we strongly recommend it, and these kind of choices are available to you. For external, you should probably use a public certificate authority. And I think last year, Vadim, you and Omar gave a demo showing how this goes in, so I'll just flash a screenshot really quickly, but in IIS, it's a very simple procedure to install the certificate, and you may even be able to find these days public certificates for zero cost. So talk to your IT department about procuring a certificate. So once the web server can prove its identity, the next thing we'd like you to know about is hardening it with a tool. And you'll see there's many tools out there. We built Coresight using this tool from Microsoft, Web Application Configuration Analyzer. It has coverage of both operating system, SQL Server, which Coresight uses, and IIS. So it's a nice set of rules. You can see there's 159 rules it checks, and it just is a nice tool to be sure you haven't forgotten to lock anything down, provide some guidance. But use a tool of your choice. There's many other tools for checking the configuration of a web server. Now the next piece is operational, right? So you can lock it down, but in this day and age, there's still issues that can pop up, and you have to have some kind of regimen to check your logs and operate it. And the scenario that we see for web attacks today is very devious. The attacks are very subtle. What happens is the website may simply have a URL that has been tampered with, and that URL redirects to a different website that has the real malware. This means that your antivirus scanner will never pick anything up. If you're relying on antivirus to protect your Coresight server, I'm here to tell you it's not enough. So you need to do more in the way of monitoring. So this is what we recommend. There's a tool from Microsoft called sysinternal sysmon. And what Microsoft has done, you know, Windows has a lot of auditing features, a lot of security features, and over the years it got complicated. Sysmon brings that all together in a nice, simple list of events, and basically any kind of changes, any kind of network connections are all logged in one place that's very, very easy for you to get at. So once you have this, what do you do with it? So there's an excellent white paper on how to forward Windows logs to Azure or to System Center Configuration Manager, so you can bring all these logs from different servers together in a common platform to analyze it. You could use PI interfaces to do this. Most people prefer to use System Center or whatever your IT tool is, but this technology to send the logs up to Azure is very interesting, and I encourage you to read this white paper. All right. So that's what we had planned to share with you. It was a technical talk, but I don't want you to forget the first point. The PI system is not yesterday's PI system. The modern PI system is hardened for cyber threats to resist them. We're going to continue to harden the PI system, and share with you techniques to minimize your cyber risks as we go forward. So please look at upgrading your software. Maybe not right away, but sometime in 2016. Make sure it's in your roadmap. Thank you.